Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, and today I am joined by Aimee and Ray of Huntsmen, who are putting out a new album, The Dry Land, this Friday off of Prosthetic Records. Aimee, Ray, thank you so much for joining me. How are we doing today?
Doing well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, doing fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, it's been 4 years since your last album. Part of the delay was due to illness in the band and other kind of misfortunes. Would you care to kind of talk about that, but also kind of talk about how excited you are to finally get this out?
Yeah. Um, yeah, really, it's just just kept having like horrible shit happen to us.
Yeah.
So it kind of started, right before the pandemic happened. So it was like we had our second double album, or our first double album, but it was our second full length, right?
Mhm.
Called Metal of Fear. That was to be released March 13th of 2020, and that was the
Yep.
day that Chicago went into lockdown.
Yeah.
And, we had a small like European tour booked and some, Midwest dates. And obviously all of that, just kind of fell by the wayside. And um, so obviously that was a bummer. Like, looking back now, it's kind of weird because the world kind of gave artists um, quite a bit of support right during the
Mhm.
pandemic because it was, artists visual and like musicians and stuff, obviously, um, you know, just had nothing to make them any money or do anything.
No.
So we ended up selling quite a bit of records and like had quite a bit of momentum going, as much as we can without touring or doing anything else,
Yeah.
right? But all of our shows were canceled and
Yeah.
we kept pushing it back. So, like we ended up pushing that back to like 2021. And then, of course, things were still canceled in 2021
Yeah.
and trying to make the best of it. And then, that rolled around to 2022 when finally things started loosening up and the vaccines were out and all that stuff. And we were able to finally like start playing some shows again and like really get things rolling. So we put out an EP in 2022. And then we went to Europe and
Yeah.
we played Roadburn Fest, which is, it's one of the most amazing shows we've ever played for
Yeah.
sure. And great reception. It was just like super fun. It's everything we wanted. And then we had a few more dates, um, another like 2 weeks of dates. And then we played a couple shows in the UK and
Mhm.
we woke up on this Saturday whether we were supposed to play Desert Fest
Yeah.
London, and we all tested positive for COVID. And so immediately, obviously that's a big
Yeah.
bummer. And so we went and like quarantined in like this little small seaside town in the UK,
Yeah.
and we all just got sick as fuck.
Sick as been. I've never been that sick in my life.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
absolutely awful.
And it's one of those things. It's like, here in the US, I feel like, you get COVID and it's like people don't even know that they really have it. They're just like, yeah, I
Yeah.
think I got it or whatever. But over there, it was just like, I don't know, a different strain or something. But we were just so sick. And of course, we couldn't even come back into the US until we tested negative. So then
Yeah.
we all tested positive for like 14 days. So we were
Jesus.
just
Yeah.
like quarantining and we had to get back to like Brussels too. So we were like still technically positive when we had to like go through the tunnel. And it was probably we weren't supposed to do that, but whatever. And we ended up getting back to Brussels and we had to wait another week in like a little weird, just like super creepy suburb of Brussels.
Yes.
And then another little side note, our one guitar player, Kirill, is no longer in the band, but at that time, um, he for some reason, like we all, we waited the 14 days and we all went and did like the official government test to,
Yeah.
to be able to fly. And we all were negative except for Kirill. He tested positive. And we're like, well, he's been quarantined for 10 days, like on United's policies. We were flying United. They said, like, if you've been quarantined for 10 days, you can still fly. And
Yeah.
when we got to the airport, they were like, no, he's not getting on the plane.
Hmm.
And he was like, what the fuck? Like, what are we supposed to do? He ended up going and to the airport.
It was like a testing
Yeah, the
facility at the
testing, yeah,
airport.
at the airport. And he went and tested there. 10 minutes later, he met with the manager, some manager at the airport, and he got a negative result. And the manager like walked him through the whole everything in the airport to get him through security. And he got on the plane with like 5 minutes to spare.
Holy shit, that's a story.
Yeah, they ran through the airport and we're all sitting on the plane just watching the
Yeah.
door,
Yeah.
hoping that he gets on. He
Yeah.
finally did.
But yeah, so then, it's like we get back home and it's like that. It was just like the biggest bummer ever. That was our
Yeah.
first European run, first UK run, right? And it
Yeah.
just like ended so fucking horribly. So we had to like really regroup and try to regroup super bad. So as we're regrouping and like getting our shit together and started writing the dry land, unfortunately, this is like 2 years ago, almost to
Hmm.
the day, Aimee and our dog Pickles were like viciously attacked by this pit bull in an old neighborhood that we were at.
Oh,
It was really bad. I was
yeah.
in the hospital. Our dog was in the hospital. I now am dealing with PTSD from the incident. It's
Yeah.
been a recovery process. It
Yeah.
was
Shit. I'm
really,
so sorry. Yeah,
really
that's
bad. Thank you.
But
yeah.
it was just like, there's like a news article about it. Like
Uh,
this fucking this dog got out of its collar, and the guy was just an older dude. He didn't do anything. He just stood there. I was at work,
uh,
and he was charging at Pickles. So Aimee picked up our dog and then was tackled by this dog and like chipped her fucking tooth on the ground and was pulled by her fucking hair and like, multiple punctures on both
uh,
of them. Pickles almost died. He had to get a couple surgeries, and Aimee, had all of these, uh, all
I
this
couldn't
shit.
use my hands. I had bites all over my hands. I had
mm.
trouble walking. It was rough. I have a bunch of scars, but I'm just gonna tattoo over them, so it's
Yeah.
fine.
Hell yeah.
So that, right,
Yeah.
obviously it's the big setback. But again, we forged on, we moved, and things like start feeling a little bit better.
Yeah.
And about uh, you know, a year, I guess, ago. Um, well, another thing that was like with this attack is like a long-term effect is like, Aimee and I were getting married last year, and
Uh,
that was in September. And 2 weeks before our wedding, um, our dog Pickles lost control of his fucking hind legs because of a spinal issue that stemmed from this attack. So we had to go do like an emergency spinal surgery.
yeah.
Um, and that was a big thing right before our wedding, right? It all worked out, everything's fine. But coincidentally, around the same time as this, well, I guess to back up a little bit, our guitar player Chris, singer guitar player Chris, in 2018, he had a herniated disc in his back, so he had surgery for that. It
Sure.
got much better, but then around this time that Pickles had his herniated disc for his spinal surgery,
Yeah.
Chris's pain started coming back. So Chris, all of a sudden started getting these like really debilitating um, back pain that would like shoot through his legs and shoot all through his body. And for a while, he couldn't even pick up a guitar. And he kind of, he's dealing with like this existential crisis of like, am I ever going to be able to fucking play music again? And like, what is that going to look like going
That's
forward?
heavy.
Yeah, and especially
Yeah.
for someone like him, like I can't, not to just,
Yeah.
talk up Chris, but he is a very unique person where he will write like a madman all the time. Like some people are like, yeah, I write all the time. This Chris, he has probably like 50 plus ideas,
Mhm.
pieces of songs, lyrics, full-fledged ideas that are just sitting in a bank somewhere because he just, creativity comes to him in like I don't even.
It's like a tidal wave that doesn't stop. It's just the constant
Yeah.
flow of creativity. It's really
It
incredible.
is, but for him, not being able to play for any amount of time is like the worst shit ever. Luckily, he is like, well, and so again, that all happened maybe a month or, a month before we were supposed to do Desert Fest New York, and we had a little run connected with that too of shows. We had to cancel all those because the doctor was like, you have almost bone on bone contact in your back, and if this gets worse, you could potentially lose control of your bladder, you know? And
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
like, so, he's talking to specialists and he talks to, reading books and reading articles about it, like spinal issues are a extremely complicated and very little known problem that people have. Like every
Yeah.
doctor will have a different thing about it. Everybody has a different cure for it. Like nothing ever really works. Nothing is ever really permanent. It's just
Hmm.
like it's really like a sea of bullshit you have to wade through.
Yeah.
And so Chris kind of navigated this and has since been able to play for multiple hours. He's been able to fly. He's been able to be in a car for extended periods of time, barring that he doesn't ever carry any piece of gear again and is just careful, right? So
Hmm.
that kind of takes us to today, and like now we're kind of picking up these pieces where it's like it's really hard for us to book shows having not been able to play for so long. And we have done little runs here and there
Yeah.
and we played shows here and there, but it's like, you know, everyone wants somebody who's really active, and it's like we haven't been able to because of
Uh,
all these different, crazy
yeah.
reasons that are like
Yeah.
just somehow have fallen upon us. So now we're just kind of reeling it reeling it back in and figuring out what we can do and what we're trying to do. And so that was the first part of your question.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
What are some of the issues, right? But then,
Yeah.
and I'll let Aimee take the next part where it's like, getting geared up for this album and what this album means to us. It
Yeah.
means, for me, it means everything. And to
Yeah.
Aimee,
Yeah, it's a symbol of our collective healing.
Sure.
Um, we have themes in the album that are opposites, life and death, light and dark, and overcoming all of these issues in a very, very real way.
Hmm.
This is the first time I've ever actually written with Hunstmen. Prior to this album, I was doing guest vocals.
Sure.
So now as a full-time member, it's really exciting for me to see some of my ideas come to life.
Yeah.
This is actually the first band I've ever been in. I've always done the just like acoustic guitar singer-songwriter thing, which was
Sure.
super fun, but also
Yeah.
got kind of boring and lonely. So joining
Yeah.
Huntsman has been really awesome. And this album and being able to play our release show and have a little Midwest run coming up, it just really means the world to us.
I'm in Minneapolis. I'm a fellow Midwesterner, so I don't know if you were planning on coming up to this part of the Midwest, but that's good to
we
hear.
are.
We are,
We are,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Hell yeah. Well, kind of following that timeline, because that's a lot of shit that happened. When did you finally able to find the time and find, the strength to like get in the studio? When did this album start?
Yeah. So technically we've been writing these songs like Chris is such a psychopath. He like we will be in the studio writing,
Hmm.
like recording Mandala of Fear, and he already has some pieces and songs written for this.
Yeah.
And then of course the way that we write is we kind of all throw ideas into a hat kind of, and we kind
Yeah.
of jump things around and we get a skeleton together, and then we go back and then we tweak the skeleton, and then we add this and we change that, and we end up changing a song, 20 times. Like it
Yeah.
ends up taking us months and months to actually write a single song. But when you're writing for 4 years, like those months add up. So That was April of 23. Um, we got in the studio, and it's a studio here in Chicago on the South Side, called Bricktop.
Yeah.
And if any, musician, all musicians know this, metal musicians, hardcore people especially, Bricktop is the fucking place. Like Pete and Andy both, they just do things in a kind of like old school way where it's a little DIY, but obviously they're super proed out.
Yeah.
But it's affordable for people,
Oh
and
yeah.
they do it right, and they're not worried about, the glitz and glamour of, like, I don't know, some shit you get when you try to go to another bigger studio. You kind
Sure.
of get this like front, or this like we're we're fancy
Yeah.
attitude or whatever. And you go to Bricktop and it's just some real motherfuckers doing some real shit.
Yeah.
And it was the first time for us, like me especially, like when we were in the studio. So this is in April, I said, it's like right before my birthday, and I'm like feeling all good about it, right?
Hell yeah.
Um, and we start playing, and it's like it's going really well, and we actually took the time to be like, you know what, like we want to experiment with this part, or like you know with drums it's always like get your shit done first because everyone else has to go.
Yeah.
And the way that I like to do it, is we kind of do full demos of everything. It'll be
Yeah.
every single piece, and that way we can upload the stems from the demos into the Pro Tools that they're using at the studio, and I can be by myself and record by myself
Yeah.
without
It's incredible.
any other distractions, um, and to really concentrate on shit. So because things like went so well, like I took the time to experiment, and like
Hmm.
there's a song called Cruelly Dawns where it has like some weird little uh, kind of abstract drum solos before this
Sure.
chaotic part at the end. And all of that was just figured out at the studio. It was like I had
Yeah.
a completely different part written, and when I got in there, I was like, this shit kind of sucks. Like, let me just try this. And everyone was
Hmm.
like, yeah, whatever, dude. Um, and when you're able to experiment in a studio, I mean, I know it sounds really stupid, but it's like nowadays,
No.
time is money, right? And no one has money to record. It's not like people have fucking $100,000 budgets or even $10,000 budgets anymore. Like people are just
No.
really getting by with, the meager means that they have to get by. And so
Yeah.
any time to like fuck around when you're
Yeah.
paying for it, there's stress involved too, right?
Of
So
course.
for us to be able to do that was really big. And I think it ended up giving an extra bit of life to the record that we don't really get on other releases. It's a different way, I guess I should say it, because each release has its own kind of magic, I feel
Yeah.
like, right? But this one in particular is just like so put together and like um and cohesive, I guess.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, I was hoping looking at the album title and the song titles, what kind of came out to me when I noticed was you seem to are playing around here with some like religious imagery. Did you want to like talk about the themes and maybe the narrative you're trying to push forward here?
Well, speaking on religious themes, the
Yeah.
first song on the album is called This Our Gospel, and that's
Yes.
actually the first set of lyrics I wrote for Huntsmen.
Oh, nice.
Chris came up with the title, and that
Uh,
immediately inspired me. I grew up Christian and then left the church when I
shit,
was
me
in.
too.
Nice. Yeah, really good decision. Um,
Yeah.
but that decision came,
Yeah.
it's a hard decision to make. You're leaving a huge part of your life behind and a
Uh,
lot of people behind. My dad died of cancer when I was 17, and losing my religion just kind of snowballed
yeah.
off of that. And you're asking all these questions like, why?
Yeah.
Why would this happen? And so a lot of my inspiration musically comes from the anger I feel after leaving the church, feeling like I was tricked or lied
Yeah.
to. A lot of the feelings that anyone who has left their religion kind of feels.
Absolutely.
Um, So this our gospel is about a young girl escaping a militant religious Christian cult. And those things are becoming much and much more prevalent in United States
They're very
culture.
real. Yeah.
Goes by. Yeah, it's scary for everyone. And you know, in our Constitution, the separation of church and state is written in it, and the government holds up their end of the deal. The church doesn't really like to hold up their end of that deal. So basically, she's trying to escape this religious cult. Eventually, she is caught by them and dragged back into it. But yeah, a lot of my inspiration comes from that. I know that's kind of the same with Chris too. But I more so was raised very Christian. I went to a mega church and I was in the band at the mega church. And so I associated that feeling of being on stage and performing and that incredible high it gives you. I associated that with my religion. And then later on in life, I started playing music on my own and realized that wasn't God. That was the way I feel on stage. It really is just that incredible. So yeah, that's always a big inspiration for me. It's still a big part of my life. I'm pretty passionate about, you know, religious rights and the right to not have a religion. Is
Right.
really
Not to have a religion. Yes.
Yes, that's, you know, the same as having your right to have a religion. Everyone deserves a chance to believe what they do, and as long as you're not hurting someone else or yourself, I don't have a problem with it, and I don't think other people should either.
It's so funny hearing you talk about this because there's so much similarity to my experience because I played bass in my church worship band. Like I know all
Yeah,
about that.
so you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, but my dad was a pastor. My family was
Wow.
I was a minister's kid, so it was kind of
Yeah.
like this is your identity. This is who you were given to as a kid, and so like to try to break free of that, it's not as easy as people might think. Like it's just like so like it's like drilled into your brain to like lose those connections. It's not an easy thing to do, but finally
Yeah.
I did like okay, I don't believe this, and I have to be honest with myself, and I'm glad I made that. I'm glad I finally broke free. But yes, I know
Yeah, that's
exactly where you're coming from.
amazing.
Yeah,
Being honest with yourself can be really hard to do, but then
yeah,
once you do it, it is so freeing.
yeah, absolutely. Um, well, something else I want to talk about, what I really like in your music is the use of differing vocals, something I find very unique. There'll be times when someone's doing vocals and then they'll switch off to another one. And I'm wondering, how do you decide whose voice to use at what part? Like how have you like figured like this is the part that I don't know, Aimee needs to sing in, or this is the part where someone else needs to sing in.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I mean, I could speak to I do all the harsh screams and shit.
sure.
That's like,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
automatic.
the way that I like think about it is I think about it in a timeline as though it were a book or a movie or something where
Sure.
you have your ups and downs, you have your protagonist and antagonist, and
Yeah.
you have your action, and you have the fall and
Mhm.
rising of tension. Obviously, these themes are like very universal to music too, but
Yeah.
especially when thinking about what to do where, it's like you can go to the high intense part, and it's like easy to say yes, that would have some screams or
Yeah.
some really intense vocals, but at the same time, as you can use that formula, say you could also kind of flip it, and you could say there are intense moments where it's better to have a delicate vocal to kind of put a different perspective on the feeling that you're getting, or
Hmm.
vice versa, a very delicate part that you just scream your fucking face off at
Yeah.
lends a completely different vibe to
Right.
it. So for me, I'm always trying to find like where it would be most impactful, either intense wise or to change the way you're thinking about the part to throw in vocals. And then for the delicate vocals, I mean, that's an Aimee and Chris game.
Yeah, so when
Yeah.
I started doing guest vocals with Huntsman, it was kind of like, well, this is a soft, pretty delicate part. Let's just have Aimee do it. which is fun. And I love doing that.
Yeah.
But with this album, we tried to shy away from our past formulas of
Yeah.
me doing the quiet, pretty vocals, Chris doing the more intense vocals, and I take the harmony.
Yeah.
And we tried to really mix it up for this album, and it's been really fun. There's an entire soft acoustic song where in the past I would have sung it, but this time Chris did it, and it turned out wonderful, and he did
Mm.
such a beautiful job.
Yeah.
And then I was able to use my voice in ways for Huntsmen that I wasn't able to before. And it's really fun. And we use
Yeah.
the lyrics to kind of guide us with what, this verse or that chorus kind of calls for.
Yeah.
Too, like I remember having this conversation with Mark about vocals, and at the time when we were kind of thinking about vocals, the Chelsea Wolfe Converge Blood Moon album came out.
I remember that. Yes.
And Converge has like always been one of my favorite bands, top
Yeah.
3 favorite bands of all time. And I remember like when we were listening to it, we were like, fuck, this is so good, because it's like, there'll be this like blast beat part where it's
Yeah.
like the guys in Converge are just screaming their faces off, but then at the same time they have Chelsea Wolfe that's doing this like really kind of minimal, abstract, like long, beautiful, held out notes, and the like juxtaposition of those together like really created a really like cool, unique thing. Not to say that obviously singing over screaming hasn't been done before. It obviously has, and a million times, but it's like the way that they did it, like to create the atmosphere and like the wall of sound that you hear. I was like a pretty big inspiration to us, and it's one of those things where it's like, oh, there are different ways you can do this. Like, fuck the rule book. If we want to do it, we just do it. And that ended up, like, for example, the song Cruelly Dawns again, it has like really insane vocal things that we've done. Like there's 2 different harmonies that are doing, contrasting lines that kind of interject over top of each other multiple times throughout the song. And it's like when we wrote that, I remember thinking like, how the fuck are we ever going to play this? Like, this is insane. But of course, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice.
Yeah.
So now it's at the point where we feel like pretty good about playing it live. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, if you don't shy away from something because 1, it's weird, or 2, it's too hard, because it's like, you make the rules. No one else does. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. I remember when that Chelsea Wolfe Converge album came out. I was just happened to I don't know why a conversation with like a record store clerk came up with me, but I did talk to them about the record, and they're like, yeah, I don't really like the new thing Converge did. It's too different. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but like I like how 2 varying approaches to like heavy music came together to create something completely new. And it's like, I don't know, it was interesting to me. It was an interesting experiment.
I might be wrong. Maybe our publicist and one of the curators of Roadburn will correct me on this, Becky, but I'm pretty sure that collaboration came about for a Roadburn collab, because they'll do that. They'll commission artists to collab and do different things. I'm fairly positive that came about for a Roadburn exclusive performance, and then they were like, fuck, this is awesome. And
yeah, I kind of wish more collaborations like that would happen. You just like stuff totally you didn't expect, but comes out create something really interesting.
I think for Roadburn especially, and again, I'm kind of talking out of my ass a little bit, but I think that like the Netherlands like really supports music, and I think that they help with a lot of things with the festival to make it like affordable and to have money go around in the ways that it needs to go around. Not to say that they have a fucking shitload of money or something, because obviously it's an independent festival, right? But the way that they support their artists is just unique to anything that I've at least experienced in the US, where like they can take the time to like get bands, different bands together, if schedules align, right, to be able to like rehearse and do this stuff, and to kind of support them both financially and with whatever they need. Like when you play Roadburn, they'll ask you like, what do you want? What do you need from us? And like bands have been like,
Wow.
I need a fucking a cellist and I need a orchestra. I don't know. You know what I mean? And they like try to genuinely, if you give them a weird request, like they will try their hardest to accommodate if they can. So it's like,
Amazing.
you play a festival here and it's like, obviously some are better than others. And I haven't
Yeah.
played, half of them. But at the same time, it's just like, yeah, you can play, just show up at this time, load your shit in, get on, play, get the fuck out. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the sentiment in a lot of,
Yeah.
um, much nicer way, I'm sure. But that's kind of how it feels. It's just like organizers have so much that they have to deal with and they have to worry about, and money being probably number one. So it's like I don't blame anybody because like how can you really take the time to curate something like that?
Yeah.
It's just super, super hard. So kudos to Roadburn for being able to do it. And I hope that other festivals and other organizers kind of get savvy to that, and so they can like start doing it, because I guarantee bands would every single band would love to do that in some capacity with some other band,
Oh, I'm sure.
why not?
Yeah. Well, kind of switching gears here. This is your third full length off of Prosthetic, and I'm curious. You've stayed with them for so long. What has been that relationship been like, and how did the like that connection even get started?
Yeah. Well, that so it got started. um we played the show with the band Chemists when they were
Of
just
course.
kind of starting.
Yeah.
I think it was our first like show in Chicago, and we got on it, and uh, Steve, our A&R guy, just he's like the most magical man ever.
Oh, nice.
He
He's
just
the
helps.
sweetest guy.
He just helps bands. He
Yeah.
doesn't do it, out of like anyone that I've met. He doesn't do things because that's how you're supposed to do it or because of money or whatever. Like he is so genuine of a person that he just like he wants to be a part of bands growing and developing. And if he can
Yeah.
have anything to do with it, he will. And so I think he was helping them, but he like brought merch to the show. He like came from his place in Iowa,
Yeah.
and Chemist is from Colorado, and brought them merch to do these couple shows. And while he was there, we just happened to play. And like, I remember someone else was working the merch booth, and they like, they're like, hey, this dude Steve came up and bought one of every single piece of merch that we had and gave us a card and was like, I work with Prosthetic Records, hit me up
Wow.
to have a conversation. And I had just seen an article that like Metal Sucks did that was like the 18 most important people in metal, and Steve was one of them. So I immediately I was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then we talked to him, and it was just like um it was a really easy decision for us, because the way that Prosthetic works with their artists is it's just like very invasive. They just like, what do you want to do and how can we support you?
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
it's not like you need to do this by this time or you need to do that. I mean, obviously they have some business, minded initiatives that they have to carry out, but it's like everything is about the bands. And if we look at the roster, it's like we're obviously, we're a weird band on Prosthetic. And that being said, at the same time, it's not like they prioritize others over us. Like they give each band their spot and their chance, and
Mm.
they help however they can. And they've only been, super, super fucking supportive of everything we've done. Like when we all got COVID in uh, in the UK, the owner EJ, immediately he is a dad. He immediately like conversations with him went from like band stuff to just like fuck everything. Are you guys okay?
Do you
Like,
need
Yeah.
groceries? What do you need from me?
yeah, he's like,
Wow.
can I help in any way? Like, I know we're not
Mm.
anywhere close to you because he's in
Yeah.
LA, but it just immediately turned to like, oh yeah, this does feel like a family. Like they actually do give a fuck about us. And it's like,
Yeah.
you hear so many horror stories about record labels and what record
Mm.
labels have done to bands in the
Yeah.
past. and nobody's perfect, right? But at the
No.
same time, it's like we're not in it to be a big famous band, you know. We're in it to play music that we want to play, and if people like it, that's great. But really, truly, everyone in Huntsman is like, you know, even doing the social media shit is just kind of,
Yeah.
you know, it feels like a chore a lot of the time because it's like we want to just be a part of something that can connect to people and
Yeah.
can connect to ourselves. And having a label that respects that and supports that, you know, it's like a no-brainer. Like, why the fuck wouldn't we, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you say you're a weird band on Prosthetic, and I've talked to a lot of Prosthetic bands, and you're right. Prosthetic seems to like focus on a lot of like a lot of death metal, a lot of death metals on Prosthetic, but
Mhm.
they do have a pretty varied lineup. I know there are some power metal bands on there. There's even like some more like
Yeah.
punk bands on there, but like they are a label that like has their specialties, but they are kind of spread out too and have like various touches on the heavy music atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, like
Mm.
Four Stroke Baron, another band
Yeah.
and Prosthetic. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's just like they are like nothing you've ever heard for sure, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and that's one of the cool things about them is like if they like it and they can see that it, you know, the band is um, you know, hungry enough to do some shit or whatever, right?
Yeah.
We'll take a chance. And like we're not, you know, we're still nothing really you know, in the grand scheme of like recognition and being a big band or whatever, but especially when we first signed to him in 2018, like we had like 400 fucking Instagram followers. You know? We definitely were not like Prosthetic put out fucking Sacrament by Lamb of God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Holy fuck, like they have done so many really, really influential things like Animals as Leaders and
Yeah.
Reflux.
On Death is taking over right now. Like,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
but yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's really respectable that they would even take the time to check out a band like us, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Well, an interesting thing that you do musically that kind of I think differentiates you from other metal bands is your inclusion on a lot of folksy elements. A lot of it touches on Americana, and I'm wondering how do you as a band find the balance to like layer and mix these and put the different aspects together and put the quiet parts in with the heavy part. How is that? How what is the palette there? How are they pieced together and figured like how do you figure out the right recipe?
Oh goodness, just a lot of experimenting. A part will go from something really quiet and end up with a four-part harmony plus Ray screaming and really heavy. And then something will start out really heavy and we're like, that doesn't seem quite right. And it'll end up with just like one person singing quietly
Yeah.
and sweetly. It's a lot of experimenting. Songs change completely from when we start to what
Hmm.
it ends up as. I personally have a lot of fun experimenting with vocals. Do we need a single person or do we need all five of us singing? It's sometimes we'll write a bunch of harmony parts and we don't even use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have anything
Well,
to?
yeah, I mean, also it's just like we all have I mean, we all have similar tastes in music, but we all definitely can't come from like very different.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I am just like a punk and hardcore kid. Like I was in punk bands growing up in hardcore bands. I like a ton of shit now. Like Amy, you know, like she's going to see James Taylor the day after our album release.
I love 60s and 70s music, 60s and 70s singers, songwriters.
Yeah.
That's how I learned to play and write music. So we have that influence.
And
Yeah.
like Chris is from Richmond, you know, Virginia, you know, and it's like he grew up with a more folk tradition and just shit that he would be around growing up, you know, and like Mark is from Louisville and like same with him. He was like a jam band kid when he was like younger.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
like, you know, he'll go see fucking Fish and shit. To my dismay.
Yeah.
I always tease him about it. He's like, fuck you, dude. I like what I like. But, you know, when it all comes together, it's just like, not that we consciously are like, let's throw a different genre in. It's like, it doesn't
Yeah.
happen like that, but it's just like, you know, the things that come natural to you just tend to work their way out, especially on an instrument. Like, I can't say that my experience playing in punk bands doesn't come through in Hunstmen with the like intensity that I play and how I write my parts,
Yeah.
right? And the same with guitar, especially like with, vocals and guitar and melody and shit, because it's just like you can't stop that from coming
Yeah.
out. Those influences that you grew up with are just embedded into your fucking, persona, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like they just kind of come up and then we fuck with them a lot and just change them.
Yeah.
Eventually it turns out to be something that like sounds pretty cool, and then we'll be like,
Mm.
oh sweet, how do we develop that idea more and really again do the story arc and make it into
Yeah.
something. Like a lot of, music is very formulaic in general. And it's really easy to fall into a formula.
Yeah.
A lot of bands do it, and nothing wrong with that either, right? But for us, it's like if we start falling into a formula, we kind of check ourselves and we're like, it's not really a Huntsman way to go about it. Like
Yeah.
we kind of the thing that we joke around about in practice is like, hey, this song sounded pretty good, but let's do the Huntsman thing and fuck it all up and change every single part of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's a pretty frequent conversation
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah, I did happen to you talking about your different other musical interests that you brought into this band. I happened to I was just looking at different pages of yours, gathering questions, and I noticed that a couple of you in the band made like Spotify playlists with like a bunch of different tunes. One of you, I think it was Mark, had like Wu-Tang Clan in there and stuff. I was like, this is cool. This is like it's not all just metal bands. There's like some interesting touchstones here. So yeah,
It's like funny because we've, especially for like Mandala of Fear, but we're
yeah,
seeing it a little bit now too. When when we put out any music, we'll get some critics and fans too that are just confused, and they're
sure.
like, "What are they doing?" And we always laugh at that because it's like, number one, it's my band, it's not yours. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want to do, and you're gonna like it or not like it. But also the weird expectation. I've definitely been guilty of this in the past too, but the expectation for a band to put out something that you recognize or that you want them to put out. And it's like, what did I show you? Oh my God. It was Noel Gallagher, a little clip from Oasis where he was talking about, he's just like, fans are fucking stupid. Like, if you put out something for a fan to like, then nothing is ever going to grow and nothing's ever going to progress. And you're going to hear the same shit over and over and over again forever for the end of time. Like, you have to put out something new that people don't understand and they don't like to actually be a tastemaker or to be a creative person. And like,
Sure.
if you give a fuck about what other people think, it's gonna be dog shit and it's not gonna come across. Like,
Mm.
especially with music, like there's nothing more that I can, you know, stress that it's just like the second you start caring about what this person will say and what, it's really easy habit to get into, especially for bands, especially when you're on a record label, and
Yeah.
especially when you've been getting even a tiny minor taste of
Yeah.
success, whatever that might look like, right?
Hmm.
Those pressures, it's like the devil and the angel, where it's like, the angel is like saying like, be creative, do whatever you want. And the devil's like, you have obligations to fucking sell records and to play stuff that people want to
Yeah.
hear. Fuck you, do that. And you just can't listen to it. So yeah, when it comes to Huntsman, it's really fun for us because we're all very much on the same page where it's just like this, people talk about our single In Time All Things and they're like, there's some blackened elements in this song. Where did
Yeah.
that come about? And it's just like, because it sounds fucking cool and it made
Yeah.
sense for the song. Like, you don't have to like, we're not making a fucking, you know, Picasso painting where you have to analyze the chair in the back corner. Like, the
Yeah.
music is what it is, you like it or you don't, but don't expect us to do what you want to do because it's not going to happen.
Well, that's surprising that people would hear blacking elements and think that's like you going against your sound because you're a metal band. You've probably played with other metal band and like been on metal festivals and like there are black metal bands there and you're gonna hear that and you might want to it might creep into your music. I don't know. That makes all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I guess you're a better music listener than most.
Yeah. Well, I I get what you're saying and I agree. There's also, I guess maybe play devil's advocate. There are bands that I've listened to that will do what you do and bring like folk element or other elements, but it feels very forced. Like they're like, oh, let's do something different, and then it just doesn't sound like that's actually what they want to do. They just want to be different. It sounds very inorganic. With your record, what I appreciate is there's kind of this like the Americana elements add like a warmth that I don't typically find in other metal records that I really enjoyed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's just a really sweet compliment.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you.
But that is a really good compliment and makes us feel good because that is one thing. It's like I totally know what you're saying. Some
Yeah.
band that you love and they'll put out something and you're like, what the fuck were they thinking? And not like
Yeah.
that's bad, right?
Right.
I don't think that's what you were saying either, where it's like it's not a bad thing, but it just kind of catches you off guard, right?
Hmm.
And if you want to put something new and different, um, do it for sure. But it needs to make sense in the context of what you're doing, right? To do it to do it is a bad reason. It's not a
Yeah.
good reason, and it's not going to come through as authentic, right?
Yeah.
But if it naturally occurs and just melds into what you're doing, it's fucking hard to explain,
Yeah.
like how to do that. And not like there's, we've cracked the code or something either, but that is something that we kind of think about and really mess around with because, maybe at some point we could even do this, like share different versions of ideas that we've had throughout, the years that we've written them, because I guarantee there are parts of Huntsman songs that if you were to hear an early version of, you'd be like, that sounds super forced. And then to hear the final product, it's like, oh, I see what they did. They just kind of shaped it and molded it
Yeah.
into something that actually made sense.
Yeah, people can tell when you're faking something or you're not
Yeah.
being fully yourself. Like you can tell when you're being lied to or someone, is trying to fake something. It comes across in your music. And as long as you're honest with yourself, that means you're honest with other people. And I think listeners can tell and appreciate that.
I'm thinking of like when Opeth just out of the blue put out a completely acoustic album. And some people were very confused about that, but because it just sounded so Opeth, it was like people were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. This is Opeth, and we love this." But like, I think if another band tried to do what Opeth did, it would not be received anywhere near as well because it wouldn't. It just wouldn't feel natural in the way that Opeth did it.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a
Yeah.
perfect example, like looking from where Opeth started to like the prog glory that they are now. Like, oh my God, last couple albums like are some of my favorite fucking things ever. They're so fucking good.
Yeah.
And I not like I care too much about music drama and news and stuff, but there's still, I guarantee Opeth gets it all the time too. They still have people that are like, well, you started as a death metal band. What happened? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, they're doing what they want to do. And like, I think personally, like, I think their music now sounds very authentic, you know? But I bet that was like a tough decision for the band to make, to be honest. I bet that was a conscious thing where they were like, this is how we're progressing and we want to do this, but it's going to fucking piss people off and fuck them, So it's like respect for them. They're one of the biggest, heavy bands out there today. And they're still like one of the best. So
they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, you listen to those early Opeth records, and to be honest, I prefer the earlier Opeth records just taste wise, but still, I appreciate them doing what they want to do. But those proggy elements were always there. Like it was like they were right there. It does not surprise me at all that they went and like embraced that side of the band more than the metal side eventually in the future.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like funny. It's like the aging metalhead.
Yep, that's Opeth.
Yeah, how you want to be your whole life.
So something I'm curious about too, like, so I'm I'm in Minneapolis. I have a kind of a touch on the local metal scene, but we're a much smaller city, and it makes sense. I think it's easier for a band to get attention. But you're in Chicago, where there are so many bands. There's a huge scene. How do you? I guess maybe compete's the wrong word, but how do you get yourself noticed among this huge crop of bands? All vying for like the attention of these labels and for an audience.
It's hard.
Yeah.
So I have some, I have plenty of thoughts on this. Like one
Yeah.
of them, I've gone through different phases, especially as like a personally, where it's like
Yeah.
I really care about it, right? And I try to get myself out there and put the band out there and put it in front of people.
Yeah.
And I found that that is going back to an inauthentic way to do it. It's about writing good songs.
Yeah.
There is a business element. Like you have to play the fucking game a little bit if you
Mhm.
want to be on a label and tour and do the things that bands do. You have to be business minded and you have to put that forth. But that doesn't get you very far if you're forcing it and making it happen. So it
Uh-huh.
really is about making relationships with people and being a fucking genuine nice person
Yeah.
and respecting the job that booking agents and that promoters and that production people and the bar and the sound guy, like
Mhm.
if you respect these people and you treat them with respect, you don't have to fucking take shit. Still, set your boundaries and
Yeah.
stick to them. I'm fully, like it could piss people off, but at the same time, like you can't control how other people take what you're saying, right? So
Yeah.
there's like a delicate balance of being true to yourself, being authentic, respecting others, and respecting yourself enough to know when you can you don't have to take some shit either, because there are a lot of bands in Chicago and it is hard to get noticed.
Yeah.
And there's gatekeepers and there's the fucking cool club. And all of these things affect how successful a band
Yeah.
is. And especially getting into this like the cool circle where you're a band who's, you know, you anyone I'm sure, that really pays attention to a music scene sees this all the time where a band will come up very fast and you're
Yeah.
like, why? Are they that great of a band or did they just know some fucking cool people who gave them some good opportunities? It could be a mix of both, but
Yeah.
I think Huntsman has come come to a place, especially right now, where we're willing to play the game, but we're not really willing to really invest in the game
Yeah.
because like right now, finding a booking agent for us is tricky, and this is like a bit of a, you know, stuff that people don't really like to talk about a lot, but it's like,
Mhm.
without the history, like we haven't been touring very much in the last 4 years. We've done runs here and there, but it's like booking agents really want someone to show you a successful history of playing shows and doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And to get in with those, to be able to do it, you kind of have to know people. And to know people, you kind of have to be part of that fucking cool club. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's a act of kind of defiance to go against that. And it
Yeah.
can do harm to you and your band. But at the same time, it's like in the long run, I truly feel that if you don't subscribe to that fucking drama and the
Mhm.
bullshit and the game, um, if you're writing good music and you're an authentic, all the things that I already mentioned, like you will succeed, regardless if that's a commercial success or just
Yeah.
a personal success or reaching a fan. Like we've had fans, that tell us that like a particular song got them through a really hard time. And like, I
Mhm.
know that I speak for the rest of Huntsmen when I say that that means more to
Yeah.
us than playing a fucking 500, sold out 500,000 cap room.
Yeah.
Like that means dick when, if no one really is there to actually be receptive to your music and to
Mhm.
like be receptive to it. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of a recurring theme for us right now,
Yeah.
especially. It's just like if we're being authentic to ourselves, we can't control if people are going to listen or not listen. So
Yeah.
we're going to do what we want to fucking do.
Mm.
And hopefully people like it and listen to it. But if not, it's not going to stop us. And we're just going to keep doing what we're doing.
There's bands in Minneapolis that I think are great that I wish would just be able to take the next jump, but I see them playing the same bar stage once a month, the same 50 people come out, and I'm like, what? I mean, what? I think you're great. Like, what is this band missing that maybe another band that has like come out of the city has done? I don't like quite understand, what when some bands quote unquote make it and some don't. Like, what there is like a certain amount of luck that has to just happen there,
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
it's a combination of luck and opportunity.
yeah,
And you know, like any, not like I'm one to give advice, but for bands like that, it's always one of those things where it's like, just keep fucking doing it and putting out good
yeah.
music and trying. You have to try.
Right,
You
yeah,
have to put yourself out there, right? That's the one thing that's like, it can kind of feel like a slog, and it can feel like a
yeah,
chore because you're kind of constantly putting for a long time, all bands put their shit out to nobody, right? And it is really, really defeating and really
yeah,
hard to get over. Um, but it's just one of those things. It's like you got to stop worrying about what other people think and just keep doing that, and eventually it'll get somewhere. I truly believe that because you know good art, um, you know, finds a way to be seen and heard,
yeah,
and it's fucking hard. Now is the hardest it's ever been for every band. For every band. Like content, views is low, engagement is low. People aren't going to shows, they're not pre-buying tickets. I'm not talking about Mastodon coming to town. Of course they're fucking selling out venues.
yeah,
I'm talking about all the other mid-sized bands, and it's like it's so fucking hard, So it's kind of sad, right?
yeah,
I've said this before too. One of my things is like bands are doing this when they have families, lives, jobs,
mhm,
full-time things. They're struggling. You barely can pay for fucking food at the grocery store. You
yeah,
can't afford shit. You can't buy a fucking house. There's so many things against everybody that bands are still making fucking awesome music, right? That is incredible that people are able to
yeah,
create in defiance of all of that. But at the same time, if we lived in a fucking society that respected art and respected, people's
yeah,
grind and supported them, think of the art we would see then. Like, how many fucking amazing musicians and artists are we never going to see or hear because they don't have fucking time because they have to fucking survive? It's like that. It makes me hopeful and super sad at the same time.
What are you talking about? We got to have the open free market. That breeds creativity, right? Capitalism creates, yeah.
Trickle down,
Trickles
baby.
down,
Oh,
No,
man.
I completely, I completely agree. Like, hearing all these bands, like I even like watched a documentary recently about like stoner metal, and they interviewed the members of Sleep, and I had no idea that Sleep has never really made enough money off their music to like make it their job. They still work full-time jobs, and when they take time off when they tour, like that's insane to me. Like
Yeah,
Sleep is
it
massive, but yeah.
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. Um, well, we are kind of running out of time, but one thing I did want to ask you about was the artwork. It's really striking to me. I like the gold trim, and there's this like silhouette in a white dress dancing around a flame. There's a lot of imagery there. Kind of where it kind of led you to this image? What led you to decide to go with this? Like, what was the inspiration behind that?
Sorry, Amy. This is another Ray.
Yeah, this is a great
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
The past releases that we've done, I've done the art. I've painted it. I've
Yeah.
done, and this one, I didn't want a hand painted thing, and I
Yeah.
just didn't want to do it. Um, but when I came time to like think
Uh-huh.
of like what the art should be, there are so many themes in this record that are very uh that just lend themselves really well to a visual element. And so the cover, for example, this person dancing um in a burning down theater
Yeah.
is like the most contrasty visualization where it symbolizes so many different things like defiance and going against the grain and going against the odds and resilience and pushing yourself to continue when everything around you is fucking crumbling.
Yeah.
Right? These are really important things. But also, they're contrasting ideas like what the album, like what we're saying with the album, this life between two worlds, being stuck between two opposites, right? So there's also, um, we had the artist Derek Setzer do 4 images for us. So we have like an 8-page booklet that's coming with the vinyl and the CD,
Yeah.
that shows some of this too. And like one of them is like, um, kind of symbolizes like anxiety and bondage, and it's like this guy naked in a fucking room with the walls kind of shrinking in on him.
Yeah.
And it's like, some of these feelings that we've had, especially, mental health wise, especially, where it's just like the world is caving in, the world is fucking crumbling, like everything is pretty fucking dark these days.
Yeah.
Um, but to still find a way to get out of it and find a little bit of the light, right? Um, it might be a little cheesy, but it's like those themes are like universal for a reason, right? Everyone
Yeah.
struggles with it, even if it's not, you know, someone dealing with debilitating back pain or being attacked by a fucking loose dog. It's like
Yeah.
it could be as simple as fucking leaving the church and dealing with a new life. You know what I mean? Not that that's simple, but I'm just saying, it's like
Yeah. No.
there's so many ways that these themes apply themselves to people, universally, that's like one of the big things for us is like we hope um, that it can be used as like a therapeutic tool for
Yeah.
someone who can dive into this and like think about it and really, you know, investigate and attach themselves to these themes. It's like that's part of how we deal with stuff. We deal with all of this bullshit by art and how
Yeah.
we create it and the music that we make. And um, I think it all just kind of comes full circle, like it's an important album to us, but it's like a sign of the times kind of. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, it really does. It really does. Well, Aimee, Ray, before I let you go, I do want to leave the floor to you two for any last plugs or last words you might have for my audience. The floor is yours.
Oh boy.
Well, okay, I'll start. I
Yeah.
mean, mine is, this is what I deal with all the time, like
Yeah.
the anger I have with the way the world is, the
Yeah.
way that people treat each other, the way that just that everything is going. It's like it's really hard. Like the last couple of years, I found myself just being angry as fuck,
No.
being very angry at a lot of things, and it comes out in horrible ways, like the way I treat people that I love and the way that I treat my friends, and like so my what I hope that this album can do, and like a message, at least for me and being in Huntsman, is that I hope that people can find the way to express that anger and frustration um, in a meaningful way that is non-harmful, right, to themselves or to others, and can
Hmm.
still express and feel okay that like everyone's justified in feeling the way that they're feeling, but and having an outlet in a therapeutic way to get that out
Yeah.
is like is everything. So my message is just that, make art and do it for yourself, and hopefully people are nice to each other, you know.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a second to just thank my bandmates for being so awesome.
Oh,
Ray's been playing in bands since you were 12?
Mm.
12.
yeah.
I've been playing in a band for 2 years. Um, And the same with the other guys. Everyone's been playing in bands since they were teenagers, and most of us are in our 30s. Chris is in his 40s. Um, and everyone's just been so awesome. I was really honestly terrified to join Huntsmen. Um, just trying to balance learning something new with taking care of my mental health as well. And everyone's just been so supportive and so awesome. I couldn't
Yeah.
ask for a better group of people to grow with. We've all
Awesome.
grown together, and I've grown so much over these past couple years writing with Huntsman. It's incredible, and being a woman in metal isn't easy, or being a woman anywhere isn't
Yeah.
easy. And so also trying to navigate that, sometimes we'll play a show and the production people just assume I'm like the merch girl and I'm not actually in the band.
Yeah.
But everyone's always makes sure to be like Aimee too, and like mentions that Aimee's here. And, yeah, I just want to
Yeah.
thank my bandmates for being awesome and point out
Oh yeah.
how lovely they are.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, like I said, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you, Aimee and Ray of Huntsman, for joining me. Check out The Dry Land coming out June 7th off of Prosthetic Records. As always, thank you to my patrons who keep the show running. My name is Maddie, aka Beavermosh, and I'm signing off.